So, this is a topic I'm sure a lot of my friends on Facebook are very, very curious about, but we really haven't touched on it much since we've been back. So it's about time to dish the dirt and tell you why it is that we decided to leave paradise. We had a lot of excitement about us going to live on St. Thomas for a year, but we hadn't exactly made a grand production of us coming back because there's a lot to process. We needed time to process everything that happened and how in the world something that seems so good could go so very, very wrong. All right, a little bit of backstory for those of you who aren't familiar. A few months back, I had a job offer. I thought it was going to be basically the opportunity of the lifetime for a couple of empty nesters like us. I was offered a job on a tropical island, St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands to be specific. We were supposed to be there for a year, but 2 months later, here we are, back on the mainland. So what happened? First, I have to say that the island is absolutely beautiful. Great weather most of the year. It's always a bit warm and muggy, but I far prefer warm to cold, so I loved the weather. The beach and the ocean is never more than a 20-minute drive away, which is awesome for someone like me. I love to snorkel, I love to swim. I just love to be in the salt water. It just makes me feel, it's a very healing energy, for lack of a better way of putting it. There's like 20 public beaches on the island. Some have a fee, some don't, but you've always got opportunities and access to the ocean, to the beaches. I had what seemed to be a really great paying job. We had a beautiful apartment with the most amazing views I've ever had in my life, and probably the most amazing views I'll ever have in my life. But as they often say, things aren't always what they seem. So, going into this, we knew that the cost of living was going to be a bit higher than we were used to. I mean, we went from Kentucky with one of the lowest cost of living in the country to an island. When we started looking into making the move, I was looking into the cost of living, budgeted what we thought was going to be appropriate given what I thought were going to be the standard increase in cost based on my research. So, rent. We paid $2,000 a month for a furnished apartment. The apartment itself was absolutely beautiful, nicely furnished, great location, amazing views. We had the most amazing views that you could imagine waking up to every single day. So this is what I'm talking about. I mean, the views were simply amazing. Waking up to this every morning, going to bed to this every night, eating dinner out here on the lanai and getting to see just amazing views of the ocean was really one of the most incredible opportunities we had on this island. It's a pretty amazing apartment overall, and the views were just incredible. Now, our utilities weren't fully included, but we had enough of a stipend to where, the way we live, we never ended up having to pay a utility bill. And so, that part was nice. There were some drawbacks to this place, which is going to become very important in a little while. But, the biggest factor for us was that our rent from Kentucky to the U.S. Virgin Islands increased by $700 a month. And we went from a 2-bedroom, 1-bath with a full finished basement to a 1-bedroom apartment. And we haven't done apartment life in quite some time. So there were certain things about it that just, it wasn't great for the price. It was beautiful, but I can't imagine paying that much money for what we got again. Now, vehicles. This one is a doozy. Now, if you ever decide to leave the mainland and you're not in the military, like if you're moving to Hawaii, you're moving to the U.S. Virgin Islands, what have you, this is a very important thing to note. If you have a car note, if you owe, a bank for your car, you have a loan on your car, they can absolutely refuse to allow you to move your car off the mainland. And that's exactly what happened to me. My bank wouldn't grant permission for us to import my car. Now, looking back, this was a huge favor because we would have had double the expense to come and go with my car. So, at the end of this whole story, I'm grateful they didn't, but at the time it was a horrible inconvenience because public transportation on the island, not great. Unless you happen to live on a main road, you have no access. And with our location of our house, I would not have had any access, so we had to rent a car. We spent $1,400 a month on a rental car, which, comparable to the mainland, doesn't sound awful. It's about what you would spend for a monthly car rental here, but the rental cars on the island are beat to hell. I mean, the chrome was missing off of it. It had issues, with the outside. It had some mechanical issues going on with it. It wasn't a great car for the money. And plus, they were getting ready to increase the rates because tourist season was coming. So we were told we were going to have to pay even more for this hunk of junk car that we were already paying too much for. On top of that, we were still paying my car payment and full coverage insurance for my car that was sitting parked at my kid's house in Texas. So basically an extra $1,400 added on top of our budget that I didn't originally plan for going in. Now, food. This one is massive. Now, I knew going in that our groceries expense was going to increase because, it's a given. It's an island. You're isolated. Everything has to be imported. So when I was budgeting before we moved, I planned on, okay, we're going to spend about $1,000 a month on groceries instead of the $600 we normally spend. However, it ended up being close to $1,500 a month, and we eat fairly inexpensively. Now, here's a few examples that I shot while we were there. $10.29 for cheese.
There's our eggs. $10.99 for Welch's grape juice. No, thank you. Guess I'm gonna stink. It's honey bunches of nope. We have change for William is $17.99. In Tostino's party pizza, $4.99. Looks like I'm not having ice cream anymore either.
Tell me that's not crazy. Now, the final nail in the grocery coffin that made us say, okay, nope, we're done. Time to pack it up. This is not going to work. So when we decided we wanted to have taco night. Now, when we do taco night, usually, even if we have to buy everything, ground beef, seasoning, sour cream, cheese, and tortillas, here in the mainland, it's under $15, sometimes under $12, depending on what we already have in the fridge. Those same items, ground beef, cheese, sour cream, tortillas, and a taco seasoning packet. No veggies, none of that good stuff on it. Cost us $41. We about passed out when we got to the register and realized just how much we were spending on tacos. And even beyond that, even dining out there wasn't great. When we were first moving to the island, we were so excited at the thought of, new flavors and new experiences because it's culturally different. The island, you've got your native islanders, you've got a huge Haitian population and a huge Dominican population, so we were excited about our food options. Almost every single restaurant we went to was disappointing to varying degrees. There's only really two memorable meals that we had while we were on the island. One of those was Prime, which is a very nice but very expensive steakhouse. If you're there for your anniversary, I would recommend it. It's a great experience. The views are wonderful. The food and presentation are really good, but it's very expensive. It was a once in a lifetime type of trip for us. But the best food we had on the island, and this is going to sound crazy, but it's true, there's an amazing hole-in-the-wall pizzeria who had the best slice of pizza we've had in a long time. So this is a shout out to Amore Pizza in Havenside. If you hit the island, you really need to check them out. Even if you take a cruise there, if your cruise happens to dock at the West Indies dock over in Havenside, it's right across the street. It's one of the best slices we've had, and Joel says it's one of the best slices he's had outside of New York City. Seriously, we made it a point to go there for lunch our last day because we knew we were going to miss not only the pizza, but the owner. The owner, Joe, he's the guy from, is it Joe or John? Joe or John, one or the other. He's from New York, so him and my husband had a good little rapport going on there too. But with the exception of that pizza shop, everything is woefully overpriced. Okay, so as I said earlier, our apartment was amazingly beautiful. Panoramic view of the ocean, access to a pool that very few of the residents ever utilized, so we usually had the pool to ourselves, which was nice. Comfortably furnished and discounted utilities, but the roads on the island aren't the greatest, and I'm talking about the main roads. We had a very steep, very narrow 1 mile drive up and down a hill to get to our home. Part of this road had not been touched by road crews in I don't know how long. It was lots of potholes, lots of divots, very so narrow in some spots that you would have to wait for the other car. If a car was coming the other way, you would have to wait for them to pass, otherwise you're going to have a wreck. It was very nerve-wracking. I mean, wasn't fun at all. More than once, there was one occasion where we were afraid of getting into an accident on this road, and we had to go up and down that multiple times a day if we needed to go to town, if I was going to work. It was a pretty nightmare of a road, especially in the rain. Plus, that road was really in such poor condition that I would highly recommend somebody have a Jeep. And we were driving around a little Nissan Versa. But, all of that was worth it to us. That wouldn't have caused us to leave. Where it all fell apart was our landlord situation. Now, I had found this apartment via Facebook Marketplace. I'd put a post up in a group for the Virgin Islands asking for places that were available to rent, and I had a woman reach out to me, and she's like, "Hey, I am in the middle of buying this apartment from the current owner. I'm going to want to rent it out for a year because I'm not going to be able to move in for a year because my daughter's still in high school. Would you be interested?" And I'm like, "Well, sure." She's like, "Well, you're going to have to rent from the current owner for now because we haven't closed on it yet." And I'm like, "That's fine." So talk to the actual owner of the property. We got along fine initially, not a problem, no big deal. Okay, cool. But about a month into living in the home, I got a phone call from the landlord. There was a problem with the financing for the woman looking to buy the house. There's a lot of insurance issues on the island. They got smacked by 2 hurricanes about 7 years ago. So it's a lot harder to get suitable insurance when you're trying to also secure a mortgage, particularly in a condominium building, particularly when dealing with HOAs. So she had a cash buyer waiting in the wings who wanted to look at the property. And I'm like, well, wait a minute now. I mean, and I told her, I'm like, "Hey, wait, we have a 12-month lease. We just signed a 12-month lease with you." And she's like, "Well, you need to look at your clauses because there is an early termination clause that either one of us can exercise. And if she decides she wants to buy the house cash, you're going to have to be out." She's like, "I have another place you can move into, but the other place she offered us was smaller and not as nice, and she was wanting the same amount of money. So that was a no for us as well." Now, end of the day, the cash buyer decided the place wasn't for her. But at that point, my trust in the landlord was absolutely gone. And we couldn't live under the potential knife of having the rug pulled out from us at any point in time. That's really no way to live, particularly on an island with a high cost of living, a shortage of places to live, because it took us a little bit of time to find this place. And plus, almost every place on the island is like moving in New York City. They want first, last, and security deposits. So you're looking at $6,000 plus just to move into a new place, which was something that at that point we knew just wasn't feasible. And for that reason, as well as the other, a couple other reasons, we also knew, hey, this is over. We've got to do something. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. First of all, the location of my job was amazing. I can't even begin to say how wonderful it was to have a beautiful view of the ocean every day at work. It was the most soothing and relaxing situation you can imagine working in, as far as having that. Not stuck in a little restaurant where you can't see out the windows, not stuck in an environment where you don't see daylight. We had natural light and air flowing through the building all day long. It was literally on the ocean. It's part of a resort. I'm not going to mention the name. Those of you who follow me already know where I worked. So we're going to leave it at that for now. but those views are pretty much where the good times end. For starters, there was no working AC in the building. When I was doing kitchen training, it was 96, 97 degrees in that kitchen, and these people had been working under those conditions for quite some time. Apparently, there was some kind of dispute between the franchisor that owned the brand that I was working for and the resort where the restaurant was located. The resort owned the property. They didn't like to maintain the property. There were a lot of disputes. And the disputes have been going on for years, and things weren't getting fixed, the AC being the most critical. Then there's the bugs. If you've never been to the U.S. Virgin Islands, let me tell you, the bugs are horrible. The mosquitoes are bad. The sand fleas are worse. Joel and I lived on the resort property for the first month while we were finding a place to live and securing our place to live. And the sand fleas and mosquitoes just destroyed Joel. 4 months later, and his legs are pretty much permanently scarred. It looks like he had the worst case of chicken pox you can ever imagine. It was really bad for him. And then there's the smell. If you've never been on an island that has an inflow of sargassum seaweed, which is a seasonal thing, it happens 3 to 4 months out of the year. It has something to do with the flows and the currents and whatnot. But anyhow, it smells horrific. And the beach is right there in front of the restaurant, so that sargassum's washing up, and the resort did a really, really, really poor job of mitigating it. And they would choose to mitigate it in the middle of the day when we're already open instead of having a crew come in when there's nobody in the restaurant. So we always constantly had issues with the smells, the complaints because of the smells, and the resort just wasn't keeping up their end of the bargain when it comes to maintenance of that either. And then there's the issues with the restaurant itself. When I was hired, part of my offer included health insurance. Cool. Health insurance is a very important thing in this country, especially if you're going to be on a tropical island where everything's already more expensive. So we pack up and move our lives to the island. We get there, boom. There's no health insurance. It was an error, oopsie, because their locations in Jamaica have health insurance. Now, this becomes a very good thing for me later on because it means they didn't hold up to their end of the bargain first, which means I wasn't on the hook financially when I chose to leave. Otherwise, I would have been on the hook for a good chunk of money because of my moving expenses getting there. But fine, we're already there. We're here on the island. We can deal with the lack of insurance. We're just going to be very careful for the year. No big deal. Now, here's the second issue. Corporate is not paying their bills. At the worst point during my time there, we couldn't order liquor. We couldn't order 2/3 of the food products that we needed to run the restaurant. We couldn't order items for the gift shop because corporate had fallen behind on all of our bills. Some of them we're talking the tune of 50, 60 grand. Now, I had a conversation with the VP of operations when he called me to see how I was doing, and I voiced my concerns about this. And he assured me this was a very temporary thing. They had 2 different locations in Jamaica that had both been damaged and who were, currently not open because of that, and that had really affected their finances because they were trying to fix those properties, blah, 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 blah. And then I had employees who had been there telling me for a while, no, that's not true. It's been like this for 4 years, our GM 3 GMs ago was using his own credit card sometimes to buy items just so we could stay open and operational. I mean, the bartenders were embarrassed because they'd have to tell guests that they couldn't order a drink that was supposed to be the signature drink of this restaurant. It's just a ridiculous situation that had been going on for a very long time. And at any rate, it's not very professional. But the final nail in the coffin and why I'm like, okay, I'm done, was when I was asked to do something that I felt was very, very unethical. I was responsible for payroll every other week. This was a very antiquated system. I had to literally pull payroll from one system, put it into an Excel spreadsheet, and send it off to our payroll processor. That was part of my job. A little crazy. I've not seen a larger restaurant requiring this, but hey, I'm good with numbers. They taught me how to do it. Not a problem, no big deal. My GM was trying to fix labor, and her solution was to tell me to remove overtime from time punches. That's when I knew I had to go. because I just couldn't justify ethically. And I certainly didn't want to be there when the inevitable fallout hits, because that's going to hit, and it's going to hit him right between the eyes. And I don't want there. I don't want to be any part of that. So we left. No notice. I don't like doing that, but I also knew that if I gave notice, they wouldn't pay me. And I was correct. They didn't pay me for my final week that I was there. So good on me, you know. Now, all in all, I don't want to discourage you. I don't want to discourage tourism. St. Thomas is an absolutely beautiful place to visit. And I can't say that we wouldn't go back for a vacation, because we might. But if you ever decide you want to live there, you need to be financially prepared. And I mean well financially prepared. I was making $80,000 a year. And after bills, we couldn't throw anything into savings, and we were paying the dead minimums on my credit cards. The island is also a great example of the fine line between heaven and hell. Mainlanders move here and move there and they build beautiful mansions, and meanwhile the locals can barely afford to survive. We romanticize, the view of living in paradise, but to be honest, at the end of the day, it really was no picnic, and that's why we left. So there you have it, guys. That is the story of how we went to paradise and left paradise, all in the span of just a few months. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.